All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started. First of all, I was just a couple of minutes late, so I didn't get a chance to put up the slide for the sponsors, but I'll mention them, and because I don't want to take control from you. You've already got control of the presentation, and it's better to not mess with that because sometimes things can go awry, and then that doesn't, sometimes you can't get it back. So, but our sponsors are Sistran and Microsoft, so I want to make sure that I mention them. And the track chairs are myself, Patricia O'Neill Brown, and Jen Doyen. And all right, let me introduce you. So our first speaker of the government track this morning is Kristine Metuzale. I don't know how to pronounce your last name. I
That's
apologize.
absolutely correct.
Okay, so I guessed correctly. I am. You're in familiar territory. Nobody can pronounce my last name either. It's pronounced Hike. So, the title of the talk is "A Tale of Eight Countries, or the EU Council Presidency Translator in Retrospect." She's going to talk about a system consisting of a number of tools, including translation memory and AMTA, developed for use by EU translators, including a discussion of a tool selection and system architecture, as well as how it's being used. So without any more delay, I introduce Kristine.
Thank you very much. I would like to add straight away that I will be joined also by my colleague Marcis Pinnis, who is our Chief AI Officer at Tilda and has put a lot of his knowledge and effort in developing this presidency translator. And we are also very happy that Alexandra Soska is joining us today. Alexandra works for the Federal Ministry of Interior, Building and Community in Germany and has been a key person on the translator side in introducing presidency translator as part of the German presidency. And yeah, we will be talking today about the EU Council Presidency Translator and how it has helped 8 countries in the EU to deliver translation services and be successful in running this presidency as such. In Europe, there are 24 official languages, and of course, it also puts a pressure on member states, particularly when they need to run presidency, meaning that they need to communicate with all the member states and also translate a great deal of communication and documents. There is quite a complex decision-making structure in the EU, and the Council of the EU is one of the key decision makers. It brings together member states, member state governments, and negotiates legislative acts and different policies. And to add to that is that every 6 months the presidency rotates, meaning that every 6 months there's a new operation of running the presidency, which also means a new approach and new procedure in delivering translation services. And presidencies face quite a number of challenges. This includes obligation to translate massive amounts of different documents and texts, to fast communicate presidency's work and activities, also ensure collaboration between delegates who are arriving for meetings, working groups and summits, as well as journalists and of course presidency staff. And there is another challenge to facilitate multilingual communication in Europe, meaning making information available for everyone in their respective native languages. And on top of dealing with 24 languages, there is a challenge of dealing also with challenging languages, because European languages can be very different from each other, and some of them are also very challenging. And to address these challenges, we came up with a solution which we call the EU Council Presidency Translator, which was first piloted in 2015 when Latvia was delivering EU presidency, and it was a very successful tool, and from 2017 it was officially introduced as part of the presidency and has supported translation services for presidencies in Estonia, Bulgaria, Romania, Austria, Finland, Croatia, and right now it's supporting translation services for the German government until end of this year. And the Presidency Translator as such is secure and cloud-based pan-European MT structure, customized for each presidency's special requirements. It has integrated in-domain data and terminology. It facilitates multilingual communication in Europe, making information available in 24 official languages. And it has also NMT systems integrated in Workspace. And there are several users groups which benefit very much from using this solution. For example, presidency staff and delegates who on a daily basis need to collaborate and also work with high number of multilingual documents. It's also professional translators who see increasing number of translation requests during the presidency. Journalists are benefiting very much too, since they can read local news, press releases and different documents, and in that way they can report much faster to their home countries, to the media. And two more groups which are benefiting as well are presidency visitors and actually all EU citizens who want to follow the news, who want to know what activities and policies are being decided upon on the EU level.
So in order to address all the users, the EU Council Presidency offers various translation interfaces for the different types of users. So the main translation interfaces are an online translation workspace that allows to translate text snippets, documents from most popular document formats, and the website translation. It also offers terminology lookup from Euro term bank, so one of the largest term banks in Europe. Then it also has a computer-assisted translation tool plugin for professional translators of the public administrations. The EU Council Presidency's a website translation widget, which was recently introduced in the German EU Council Presidency, an online CAT environment for non-professional translators. So an environment which you see here on in the top right corner that allows everyday public administration officials to translate documents like professional translators would translate, with simple means that do not require a lot of knowledge about translation processes. And then it also has so provides access to custom and third-party machine translation systems. The architecture of the EU Council Presidency Translator has been built such that in the center we have a translation broker, which is in charge of communicating with machine translation engines, so custom machine translation engines that are deployed on tilde MT, so the tilde MT platform, and generic engines which are provided by other machine translation developers. Up to 2020, it was e-translation only, and then for the German EU Council Presidency, also DeepL machine translation systems are accessible through the EU Council Presidency Translator, and all the translation requests through the different interfaces, so the online CAT environment, CAT tool plugins, translation workspace, website, first arrive at the translation broker and then get sent to the respective machine translation engines. The broker is also in charge of managing document translation. So when you upload documents, then those are processed in the translation broker and only translation requests of individual sentences are then sent to the different machine translation engines. In terms of machine translation systems, as I said, we feature both custom and generic machine translation systems. The main idea or why we develop custom machine translation systems is to address specific needs of the different EU Council presidencies. So we develop custom neural machine translation systems using in-domain data, which also addresses country-specific necessities, for instance, country-specific dialects. Here you see two examples. So the Finnish-Swedish machine translation system for the Finnish presidency was trained using data that has the Finnish-Swedish dialect and not the standard Swedish language data. And a similar approach was for the Austrian presidency when we had to develop German English machine translation systems for Austria. So the EU Council presidency timeline has been spanning over multiple years. So NMT technologies have matured during that time. So we have switched from different neural machine translation methods and toolkits in order to keep up with the latest trends and to be able to provide the best possible machine translation systems. So the EU Council Presidency Translator obviously features NMT systems developed with various different machine translation toolkits, as you see in the table here. And the generic machine translation system goal is to cover as many language pairs as possible. So the custom systems we develop for the main language pairs of each particular presidency. For instance, for the Estonian presidency, those were English-Estonian and the Estonian-English machine translation systems. But all the other systems were generic machine translation systems that were provided through e-translation at that time. If we look at how the EU Council presidency has been used, we see that since its official launch in 2017, it has translated over 157 million words, which, if we look in a different perspective, amount to a work that would have to be carried out by a translator over a period of 300 to 400 years. And in another dimension, it would amount to 1,700 books of the size of an average Harry Potter book. If you look at the translation interfaces, all the interfaces are used, so none of them is or shows that there is no need for it. But the most used ones are text snippet translation, which amounts to 39%, and document translation, which amounts to 26.1%. Those are publicly available, so obviously they have much higher translation volumes being processed. But we still see that cat tool translations, which are mainly available to public administration translators, also amount to a considerable amount of 16.4%. We also see that there's an upward trend in how the machine translation systems are used. We especially see that since we introduced a widget which is integrated in the official website of the German EU Council presidency, that amounts to over a third of all the translation requests in the last 3 months of the data that we have analyzed here. we believe that it will be the most used translation interface going forward, showing that EU citizens and everyone who visits the EU Council Presidency website want to have information available in their own language. If we compare custom systems to the generic systems, obviously the custom systems are the most used ones. But since we introduced the widget, which allows to translate into all the different languages, and the custom systems mainly handle the main language pairs or translation directions which are needed by the public administration translators, we also see that the generic machine translation system use is increasing since the introduction of the widget. So once a presidency concludes, it doesn't mean that translations are not necessary. So public administration translators continue using the machine translation platform. So they still have access to all the translation interfaces. And we also see that in the statistics. So all the previously developed machine translation systems are still in active use by EU Council Presidency translators users. Then another dimension that we wanted to analyze was what are the tendencies in the different countries. So how is the EU Council Presidency Translator adopted in the different countries that we supported the EU Council presidencies, and we see that the usage differs from country to country. And the usage differs depending on the level of integration of the EU Council Presidency in the official websites of each of the different presidencies. For instance, in Estonia, Austria, and Romania, the EU Council Presidency was not integrated in the EU Council Presidency website, so public users did not have direct access to the EU Council Presidency translator. However, in Bulgaria, Finland, Croatia, and now Germany, the EU Council Presidency is integrated directly in the EU Council Presidency website, and we see that there's a huge increase in translation requests. And also the different translation practices of public administration translators differ, so there's also higher or lower use of the EU Council Presidency depending on these aspects as well. If we analyze each of the EU Council Presidency's custom systems separately, so if we take a 6-month period and analyze only those systems that were custom developed for that particular presidency, we can analyze the adoption of the different interfaces by the EU Council Presidency. For instance, we see that the cat tool interface was the most used in Finland. It processed 960,000 words per month on average. Then in Romania, Bulgaria, and Croatia, the cat tool interface was not used very much. The issue with Romania was that there was a funding gap for the EU Council Presidency Translators project, so the systems were introduced quite late, but we actually see that the translators still continue using the EU Council Presidency's translator. In terms of text translation, that was the most used or most popular interface in Estonia, Bulgaria, Austria, and Croatia. And document translation was the most popular in Romania. However, the most words were translated during the Croatian presidency, so 22.1 million words on average each month, which is also interesting. We don't see a computer-assisted translation tool used in Croatia, but they use all other interfaces quite significantly. So I'll turn the floor now over to Alexandra to talk a bit about the translator aspect.
You are on mute. Alexandra, you are on mute.
Okay, so thank you.
That's fine now.
Thank you for inviting me to talk and to present to you the translator's perspective on a presidency translator. Actually, the project was for the translators in the public administration in Germany at the federal level, was the first big dive into machine translation. Actually, of course, we have used translation technology for a long time, like CAT tools, and we have also used the European Commission's e-translation system to a certain extent, but we have never integrated machine translation into our actual translation workflows before. And also, of course, we haven't been, or most of us at least, haven't been involved in such a huge machine translation project as is the Council Presidency Translator. So what did we do? First of all, of course, for the customized engines, you need data. So we were asked to provide that data, which was first for us, because usually we don't share our translation data, and we have never put it together to such an extent. And the second thing we did was to test the systems before they were launched. So because, as you might know, translators are mostly about quality. We want to have the best possible quality, and we kind of wanted to make sure that the translator offers that to the public before we publish it. And all in all, the participating in the project for us is a huge learning experience because, as I said, it's like the first really practical thing we do with machine translation. So by having to share our data, we learned a lot about what data actually means, where we can find our data, how to extract it, how to export it, how to send it, maybe also how to anonymize it, all these things that you need to know when working with machine translation. Then also the testing part was quite interesting, and to see how the systems improved through our feedback that we gave, and a lot of colleagues, a lot of translators actually participated and still do in testing the system. And also the biggest learning for us is, of course, using it in our workflows through the plugin. Like for me personally, the plugin is the biggest gift that we could get from the Presidency Translator, because in the past we weren't using that because we weren't allowed to for security reasons. So now we can use it and see how it works, because we haven't, of course, done post-editing or anything like that before, and we're now learning how that works and how it helps to increase our productivity. And we do see productivity gains in some instances, depending, of course, on the text. I'm a translator, so I'm saying depending, but you might, in some cases, it might just be that you translate one more page than you would normally do, but sometimes colleagues told me that they translated like 3 days of work in one day, but just by using the plugin. So that was quite a good example. And finally, translators, of course, they are skeptical most of the time, but I think many times that comes from not having worked with systems like that. And now we're beginning to see how they can help us and how they also can empower us, that machine translation is nothing that we are forced to use, but that we have a choice to use in our usual workflows, that we can choose whether we want to use machine translation in a certain project and through the Presidency Translator, even which engines we want to use for a certain project. Is it an EU text? Then we resort to the e-translation system. Is it something that someone from our ministry has written? Then we mostly resort to the tilde systems. Or is it something general? Then we can use the DeepL system. So that is quite amazing and empowering, and maybe not only for us as translators, like the tool itself, but for everyone in the public administration, because they can now communicate without us, which is kind of sad, but still people can use the translator to communicate also outside our office hours. And what I hear from colleagues is they mainly use it to write emails and communicate with others. So yes, it's, as I said, it's we're still learning. We have used it for 3 months now, and we have still 3 months to go. So I'm very curious what will happen, what will the feedback be from my colleagues. But so far it has been very positive. We have seen that we can still produce high quality translations, but maybe sometimes a little bit faster, and maybe also by learning more about the tools in the future, we can also become better advisors for our colleagues in the public administration who maybe want to use machine translation for other purposes and so on. So we can just add further skills to our portfolio. And I'm quite happy that through the Presidency Translator and the whole team took us on this journey. And yeah, I'm curious what's going to happen next. So back to Kristine.
So we have 2 minutes left in the session. So maybe it's time to to finish up and answer the one question that's in chat before we head over to the other one.
Yeah, so I'll make it quick. So we presented the EU Council Presidency Translator, and we see that it has been very useful for the public administration translators, and we hope that it will serve many more presidencies in the future. So now we can then move on to the question.
Okay, so the question is from username CARMAN. I wonder about the CAT tool for non-professional resources. Could you elaborate more? Is the tool more intuitive with less features, or is there other things too? You can read that, and I guess very quickly before we.
Yeah, so it's a CAT tool that is web-based. You upload documents. So, for instance, a Word document, and you get to translate like a translator. You get machine translation options. I can quickly scroll back to the example. So you see source and target examples like in a typical CAT tool, but you do not have to set up any projects. You do not have to configure things. Everything's configured for you. You can select a machine system from a drop-down, so it's automatically linked. There is a translation memory behind, so if you translate multiple documents, then you will benefit from what you have translated before. Those translation memories are private, so they are not shared to anyone. It's as simple as possible to benefit from a computer-assisted translation environment.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank our speakers, Kristine, Marcis, and Alexandra. Thank you very much. This was very fascinating. With that, this concludes this session. We'll go over to session G6, Gamma 6, which means we leave this call and we'll go to the next one either through SwapCard or directly in Teams. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone, for joining.